Hello, good morning. I hope that you're all well and that you've had a good week. It's been a busy week at Chevron. I've been doing all sorts of things this week. Sue and I, Sue from Mini McBeans, we have been working on something for Mrs. Parkman's Academy of Needlework in Swindon 2025, and it's something for the goodie bag, and we're so thrilled with how it's coming together. Talking about events, over the course of this weekend, there will be an announcement made on social media of an event that's taking place next year in the States. So keep an eye open for that. It's going to be a fabulous weekend. Part of my week has been spent stitching, and I've been making fabulous progress on the Spanish sampler that I'm working on. When I get to halfway, I will share it with you. The other thing that I have been stitching on is the little sampler our workshop is based on. So here is my progress. This is the section we're going to be looking at in this weekend's tutorial, and it's made up of herringbone stitch, and it's herringbone stitch stitched over 2 threads wide, 4 threads deep, and then another version that's stitched 2 threads wide and 2 threads deep. And herringbone is the basis of this weekend's tutorial. In this weekend's tutorial, I will also be announcing the winner of last week's giveaway for the scissor spool stand. Doesn't include the scissors. My kahanas are very precious. Okay, so we're going to look at herringbone stitch, and herringbone stitch is made up on the front of a short diagonal and a long diagonal. If we're working from left to right or right to left, the way we work the row, to go forward, we work back. And I'm going to show you that in this next video. I will start this demonstration by working a herringbone stitch that is 2 threads wide and 4 threads long. First stitch is a short diagonal. This is a compensating stitch to start the row. We will bring our needle up at top left and take it down at bottom right. We will then bring our needle up 2 threads to the left, which is bottom left. We lay a back stitch on the reverse of the fabric. The next stitch we lay is a long diagonal. This takes us to the next stitch. We take our needle down 4 threads to the right of the original starting point. We bring our needle back up 2 threads to the left, and in doing so we lay another back stitch on the reverse of the fabric. This version of the herringbone stitch is also known as open herringbone. This is because there are gaps, openings between the herringbone stitches. Herringbone stitch works up very quickly. We will repeat the stitch path across the row. We are working forwards by working backwards. We are creating a series of back stitches on the reverse. This is the back of our work. When we come to the end of the row, we will lay a short diagonal. This is a compensating stitch to end the row neatly. I'm going to lay another row of herringbone stitches. This time they will be 2 threads wide by 2 threads high. We follow exactly the same stitch path. We start with a short diagonal, which is our compensating stitch. We will end the row with a short diagonal, our compensating stitch. On the back of our work is a series of staggered back stitches. We will now work another series of herringbone stitches. We will start with a short diagonal, our compensating stitch. This time we will lay an extra stitch. Before we move to the next stitch by laying a long diagonal, we will lay a running stitch over 2 threads. We now lay the long diagonal to move to the next stitch. We will now lay another running stitch over 2 threads. This version of herringbone stitch is known as backstitched herringbone or topped herringbone or double topped herringbone. The reverse of your work will be another staggered row of back stitches. We will now work another version of herringbone stitch, a closed herringbone stitch. There are no gaps between the stitches. We will start with a short diagonal, our compensating stitch. We will bring our needle back up 2 threads to the left. We will now lay another short diagonal. We will bring our needle back up 2 threads to the left. We will now lay a long diagonal. We will bring our needle back up 2 threads to the left, and we will lay a short diagonal. We will bring our needle back up 2 threads to the left, and we will lay another long diagonal. The stitch path is made up of a long diagonal stitch and a short diagonal stitch on the front and a series of back stitches on the reverse of the fabric. If we alternate herringbone stitch on the front of the fabric with back stitches on the front of the fabric, we will be working alternating double back stitch. Let's see how we do that. On this herringbone stitch, I will lay a short diagonal, which will be a compensating stitch to end the series of herringbone stitches. I will now switch to working back stitches on the front of the fabric. I will do that by bringing my needle up 2 threads to the right of the last herringbone stitch. I will now lay a back stitch. I will now lay another back stitch parallel to the first one. I will lay a third back stitch on the top row, followed by a fourth stitch on the bottom row. I will lay a fifth back stitch on the top row. Followed by a sixth back stitch on the bottom row. I will now switch back to laying herringbone stitches on the front of my fabric. I will do that by bringing my needle back up on the top row, and I will lay a short diagonal stitch. This is a compensating stitch to start off a new series of herringbone stitches. I will bring my needle back up 2 threads to the left, and I will lay another short diagonal. I will now lay a long diagonal, followed by a short diagonal. I am repeating the first series of herringbone stitches we laid. I will prepare for switching to backstitch by laying a compensating stitch. This will be a short diagonal. I'm now going to lay the next backstitch. As I'm laying these back stitches, visualise what's happening on the back of the fabric. I am laying a herringbone stitch. Let's look at the back of the fabric. Traditionally, this stitch is worked in groups of 3, which is said to represent the Trinity. However, you can combine the stitches in any number. Herringbone stitch is a very versatile stitch. You can work so many different variations. I want to look at double herringbone stitch worked in 2 colours, and I'm going to revisit the open herringbone stitch we laid earlier to do this. I'm going to start by laying a compensating stitch, and then I will then lay a series of herringbone stitches over the previously laid herringbone stitches, filling in the gaps. When working this long diagonal, I have to take the thread under the long diagonal stitch worked in the blue thread. The long diagonal worked from top to bottom will be laid over the long diagonal worked in the blue thread. It is important to get the interlacing correct. This is such a pretty stitch. I will finish with a compensating stitch. Even the back of the stitch is very pretty. The next stitch I'm going to demonstrate is the chevron stitch. Lay a straight stitch over 2 threads, but before you pull your thread all the way through, bring your needle back up 1 thread to the left, the middle hole. The next stitch we're going to lay is a diagonal stitch. Count 2 threads across, 2 threads down, then move your needle 1 thread to the left and take your needle down. Bring your needle back up 1 thread to the left and take it back down 2 threads to the right. But before you pull your thread all the way through, bring your needle back up 1 thread to the left. Lay a diagonal stitch. Bring your needle back up 1 thread to the left. Take it back down 2 threads to the right, but before you pull your thread through, bring it back up 1 thread to the left. The chevron stitch is based on the double backstitched herringbone stitch or the double topped herringbone stitch, but it does differ. We are working forward running stitches, not back stitches, as we work in herringbone. We are also laying the diagonal stitch into the centre of those running stitches, not to the ends of the back stitches as we do in the herringbone stitch. I would like to show you another version of herringbone stitch. This time the stitch is known as the Greek stitch. It should not be confused with Greek cross-filling or Greek four-sided stitch. In Mary Thomas's Dictionary of Stitches, she records that the stitch is unusual in that each alternative row reveals that the stitches are worked and set in an opposite direction so that they lie at an angle with those of the row above and below instead of being parallel. Let's look at the 2 rows being worked. The last stitch I would like to look at today is long arm cross stitch. It is very similar to herringbone stitch. However, there is a major difference as to how the stitches are worked. As we have learnt from this week's tutorial, we only ever work horizontal stitches on the reverse of a herringbone stitch. However, when working a long arm cross stitch, you only ever lay vertical stitches on the reverse. Just as you do in herringbone stitch, when working a long arm cross stitch on the front of your work, you only ever lay short diagonal stitches and long diagonal stitches. Herringbone stitch, it is so versatile. You can use it in so many different ways, and there are many more variations to the ones that I've shown you today. You can lace herringbone stitch, you can tie it, you can overlap it. Honestly, it's endless what you can do with the stitch. Herringbone stitch was taught to children in centuries past before a cross stitch. They used herringbone stitch to secure the edge of their fabric. And they also used herringbone stitch to adorn clothing. They used it as an embroidery stitch to embellish items. Our giveaway. We had so many entries. I was really pleased that people joined in. And one of the things that came across from the content of the emails, that people stitched out those back stitches, turned their work over, saw that they had created reversible stitches on the back of their fabric, and that people went on the hunt to identify those stitches. And several people said that by looking through books to identify those stitches, that they went down rabbit holes with other stitches. Now, something that puzzled me with a lot of the emails was that the closed herringbone stitch was being identified by a lot of people as long arm cross stitch. And this really was puzzling me, why so many people thought it was long arm cross stitch. Then an email came in that said long arm cross stitch as shown in the Royal School of Needlework's stitch bank. And I thought, oh, so I went to the stitch bank and I looked at the photographs and the video they had of how a long arm cross stitch was being worked. And the long arm cross stitch was being worked with 2 parallel lines of back stitch. And I thought, that is not right. So I went down the page where the Royal School of Needlework, at the bottom of each stitch, record their reference source for the stitch. And the RSN quoted Mary Thomas's Dictionary of Stitches and Mrs. Archibald Christie's Sampler and Stitches. And I thought, I know that's not right. So I went and got my copies. And in Samplers and Stitches, long arm cross stitch is not shown with a horizontal stitch on the reverse. It's shown with upright stitches on the reverse, and it shows the needle as passing under the back of the fabric vertically. So that is not as shown on the Royal School of Needlework stitch bank. And in Mary Thomas's book, again, you can see that the needle is being shown pass vertically on the back and the stitches on the reverse as being vertical stitches. And in fact, Mrs. Christie goes on to say that the reverse side of the stitch is shown consisting of single upright stitches. So I emailed the RSN and I received a reply from the head of standards saying that they're going to investigate this stitch and come back to me with their findings. When I hear from them, I will share that with you. So, with the giveaway, the correct answers were, for the first series of back stitches, that was closed herringbone stitch. The second series of back stitches was herringbone stitch or open herringbone stitch, and the third series was double back stitch herringbone or double topped herringbone. We had 8 correct answers where all 3 stitches were identified correctly. We had many people that had 2 out of the 3 correct. So the names of the people who had all 3 stitches identified correctly, or with recognised alternative names that appear in reference books. Those names were put into a hat and one name was drawn out, and that was Debbie M. So could Debbie M please email me, and I will arrange shipping of your scissor spool holder. But everybody who entered that giveaway is a winner. You will all be receiving a chart for an unreleased design. In the week ahead, I will be emailing you with a PDF download of a sampler. And I'm saying in the week ahead because it's going to take me a long time to email everybody who entered. The little design is based on an antique sampler that contains rows of herringbone stitch, dividing rows. I have adapted the sampler slightly so that we incorporate various versions of the herringbone stitch so that you can put what you've learned to good use. Now, if you didn't enter the giveaway last weekend, we will have another giveaway throughout the online tutorial. Okay, right, I think that wraps it up for today. Whilst I've been making this video, we have had a major water leak in the garden. It was full pressure off the mains. We had a fountain. It was a new feature for our garden. So I've got to go and sort out some of the debris that's been left by that. Then I'm going to take these dogs out for a walk, and I hope that I also get some good stitching time in. I hope that you get plenty of stitching time in the week ahead, and that you get a chance to practice the stitches that you've seen today. Until next week, when we will be looking at, where is it? Oh yes, it's this funny little stitch. It's like half of a cross stitch. We've been looking at this stitch, how it was used, and some variations on it. Until next weekend, stay well, stay safe, and don't forget to look out for the special announcement this weekend on social media. Bye-bye.